Before we get started, I want to tell you why we created the Engineering Brand Love podcast. I'm Rick Milenthal. I'm founder and CEO of the Shipyard, the national independent agency that coined the phrase engineering brand love. I've led and founded enterprises in this industry for many years. I love this business. I wake up in the morning, I can't believe I get paid to do this, but I'm worried right now. I'm worried for the tens of thousands of people in our industry that are only hearing news to fill them with stress, anxiety, and displacement. People telling them that disruption is not inspiration, it's destruction. That our industry will only be about technology, not creating feelings. Well, I don't believe that. So we're going to find for each episode the heroes in our industry. The people that are leveraging technology and creativity to do great things. They often won't be famous, but they are relentless and they are inspirational. And frequently, I'll have as my co-host the people that introduce me to those heroes. In short, we're going to introduce you to the engineers of brand love. Let's get started.
I love it, baby. All strings attached. It's automatic. Like how we laugh. I'm working for you. I'll break my back. I love it, baby. All strings attached. It's automatic. Like how we laugh. I'm working for you. I'll break my back.
I'm Rick Milenthal, and welcome to Engineering Brand Love, where we introduce you to exceptional leaders that leverage technology and creativity to do great things in the marketing industry. Today, we have Tom Howell, founder of FancyAI, the badass generative search platform that makes brands eligible, visible, and preferred. They just were named Startup to Watch by Ad Age. And joining me as today's co-host is my business partner, Dave Grzelak, who introduced me to Tom. Tom, welcome. FancyAI. That's a fancy name. Tell me about it.
Thanks. Thanks for having me. And, we're excited to talk about the work we're doing and how it's really impacting how brands are discovered. So FancyAI is a generative engine optimization platform. It's commonly being called GEO. You may have also heard terms like AEO, which would be answer engine optimization. And FancyAI is a platform that helps companies understand and execute on how to actually get discovered in the large language models. And by large language models, or we'll talk about them as LLMs, those are the systems that power what we see as ChatGPT or Claude or Google Gemini or Grok. And of course, there's other ones. But foundationally, I'm sure you've heard about how those models and those systems need training, right? They essentially eat all of the information that's out there across the internet, and they use that to kind of like learn how to do what they do. Well, within that learning and in scouring the internet, they come across brands and businesses, and whatever information is out there is what the AI has access to know who you are and what you do. What we're doing here is providing a mechanism to essentially train the AI on your business. And that training is foundational to influence, right? If we can select what material we want to train the AI on for your business, we can have impact and we can have influence on how your business shows up for queries that people make to those AI engines related to your business. And so this is a super important and foundational technology for a modern marketing stack, and really essential as marketing evolves in the new post-traditional search AI search era.
Dave Grzelak, you introduced me to Tom. Why is he a great example of engineering brand love?
Well, I think the work that Tom and FancyAI are doing is just essential to our business overall, right? It is the future of search. That's inevitable. So from a business and practicality standpoint, it was something we needed to have an eye on and get involved with early. But when it comes to brand love in particular, what I think is super interesting about what Tom and the team are creating and the focus that they have is really when you think about traditional search, there's very static rules that kind of guard that. When we're trying as brand marketers to help our clients build brand love is always about a personal connection. It's always about trying to create some kind of intimate moment with consumers where you increase your relevancy and your top of mind, most important thing in their lives in that moment, right? And they're searching for something. And what Geo does is it gives us the opportunity to really tailor those, what the responses are based on people's search history, what they're doing on the line, what are they searching for, what's their browsing history, what are their emotional states. All of those kinds of things give us cues where now we can tailor our information recommendations to them. We create personalization in search that wasn't possible before. And that personalization where we can be served up with the right content, we could be the source for information, we could be the brand that's recommended. That is a pivotal moment in order to first establish brand love and start to create a connection and give our brands and our clients an opportunity to prove their value to consumers over time.
Yeah, something strikes me as both of you were talking. 10, 13 years ago, we started the Shipyard, and it was first in search engine optimization. And really, what was it? It was building digital platforms and making sure there were keywords that were going to inform search. And so that was pretty transactional. A lot of times it would have a pretty, frankly, negative effect, or at least a squelching effect on some of the creativity that you would have for those sites. It seems to me that Geo, while we talk about it as an amazing technology and it's changing the world, I think it gives us an opportunity to go back to being storytellers and that driving the eater. You think that?
I think you're spot on there because this is an opportunity to go out and really not only be storytellers, but structured in a way where the story becomes more accessible.
Yeah, I think you're right. When it comes to storytelling, one of the things that is most interesting about that is we have to be storytellers in multiple places. The whole entire kind of ecosystem of the digital landscape, everything from social and Reddit to our website content to the news articles and the publications and the way we're being influenced across all of those touch points become incredibly important. And so what we have to do as a craft, which is actually good because the industry has needed this forever, is to bring all of these disciplines to the table and have a united strategy of how you're going to go tell that story out in the world. And FancyAI and what the future of Geo represents is it's going to force agencies to do that. And it's really why, we built the agency that we built and brought all these different capabilities under one roof, is because we have to be consistent storytellers and have a vision for the way that this is going to influence the future.
Yeah, and in this new landscape, the cream really does rise to the top here a little bit. Before, we told stories to be discovered by search engines here, but now I think you have a much greater opportunity to tell the story you want to tell, right? And then allow a great story to kind of have dominance here. These AI engines can see everything. These large language models can see everything that's out there. And it's their job to curate to an extent. We've seen examples of multiple businesses with similar content, similar product, and one wins and one doesn't because one addresses and answers the questions that are asked in Reddit that are real humans and wanting real information, as opposed to answering questions that they think needs answered. Or we've seen brands win because reviews are so much more important than they were before, because reviews are not just like, do you have, a high number of stars? It's what information in that review is impactful. And then the message that we're creating, is it addressing those things?
As I listen to you, sort of along the same theme, there's a lot of rhetoric that says because of this, creative people are effed. I mean, they're shit out of luck. And actually what's inspiring me a bit, I want to see if you guys think about this. And when we talked about storytelling, there will be some job displacement. There always is, or there will be certainly transition. But I'm kind of feeling like this could be a fuel for creativity.
I see it as a fuel for creativity for sure. I mean, if you think about, one of the things we were talking about there, which was kind of all the signals that are out there and geo and the ability to kind of look at everything. That increases the importance of places like Reddit, but also increases those social channels that before, those are creative platforms. Those are creative storytelling platforms. And in the past, those social signals that came out of that didn't impact search to the same degree. They didn't have the authority and the weight of those signals. Instead, we were worried about backlinks and what content needs to be on the website. That to me was squelching creativity. Much less so than the fact that people on TikTok and people on Instagram across the entire universe, when we're tapping into influencers and we're telling these creative, imaginative stories, that now is influencing the space in a way. So I think it's adding a layer of creativity as opposed to detracting from it. And I know at the Shipyard, we're hiring more and more people focused on influencer marketing, because that's going to become more and more of a credible space, but it's also an incredibly creative space. You have some of the most fun campaigns in the world that are coming out of those social spaces. And now those are going to also have the authority to influence decisions when it comes to search.
Tom, Dave introduced me to you a while back, and I know that you've dedicated a good portion of your life to creating this. This is sort of the arrival. Full disclosure, Dave and I are a business. We're going to make some investment in your business because we believe in it. Why did you do that? Why did you feel so passionate about this as a person?
I started my career off in PR more than 15 years ago. And then, I found messaging and influencing very interesting. And then I dabbled into paid search, and I became really interested also in the analytics side of it. And the fact that, like, for the first time, you could really track back actions to what we call attribution now, where you could really track sales results or transactions or revenue or whatever back to actual actions. And then I built an agency around that and ran that agency for about 10 years, focusing on e-commerce companies and national lead generation companies and such. And search was the core to like all the services we provided. It was just a technology that I found that was so important fundamentally for brands to be able to grow and to be able to thrive. And then that landscape changed a lot, and it became really imperfect, and search was no longer necessarily tied to quality of your brand or quality of content. It became much more of just like who could spend the most, and Google moved away from having it as kind of an open market. And then, the AI engines emerged, and it was like, wow, this is going back to the early days of search that so interested me. And now we have like this entirely new mechanism that is, the first real organic mechanism outside of search, where if brands and companies do the work to get their message out there, they can win. And they don't have to be the biggest brand.
That's really interesting. That certainly was the promise of social, that you don't have to be the biggest brand. The best message can win or will win. And so, elaborate on that a little.
First off, if companies like yourself can help engineer that message and help companies really understand the right way to position themselves and get that message out there, now there's a whole new channel for discovery. These AI engines really changed my perception of how marketing is going to work in the future. And also like how much things are going to change and how rapidly they're going to change.
So based on that, where do you see it going? Where do either you see this going? We have generative engine optimization. Now we call it answer engine optimization. And, but we're really nascent now. So any thoughts of where this whole space goes?
We're on the cusp of like it's kind of like the end of the Web 2.0 world, and we're going into the Web 3.0 world. And people originally thought Web 3 was like just like a cryptocurrency. It's commonly associated to cryptocurrency and that kind of thing. But like in the Web 2.0 world, there's a very, very formulaic strategy for how brands and businesses get discovered. You run an ad, you create content, somebody engages with that content, then they go to a website or something like Amazon, and they look at the product, they may do some product comparison, and then they buy or they don't buy. Right? In this world now, we're just at the infancy of the agentic world, where the website is largely cut out of these things. Now, I don't mean that the website is going to go away. I think it's going to become like synonymous with what e-commerce did to malls. People are not going to be discovered, or businesses are not going to be discovered through websites anymore. We're going to have agents on our phone, and then the business is going to have an agent on the other side. And those agents are going to talk to each other. And we're less than a year away from this really starting to hit the mainstream. And what happens in that world? You know, Rick, if you need a dentist and you need a root canal, you're just going to tell your phone, hey, the phone already knows everything about you and knows what your preferences are. And its agent is going to go out and it's going to go and say, it's going to find a handful of local providers that can, do that for you.
Actually, Tom, I'm leaving the country. I'm a total wuss. For now,
Yeah.
even you said root canal, I started to have palpitations.
Well, maybe there's a better.
Adding Seattle.
So you're going to your agent is going to communicate with the agent that's at the dental office, and those agents are going to talk, and they're going to negotiate and see if the price works for you. They're going to find a time for you. They're going to negotiate with your schedule. All that's going to happen, and it's going to happen behind the scenes, and then an appointment's just going to show up on your calendar, and you're going to go. Well, if you think about that, that just cut out the ads, the website, the content creation, all of these things from the equation of how people discover the services or products that they need and how they engage with those businesses, and then ultimately how they get that service or product.
David, you agree with that?
I mean, I think that the idea of like an agent on your phone, there is this whole, what it's emerging that I think is infinitely more interesting than traditional search, is that you do feel like you have like your own personal shopper or a trusted guide now that is helping make recommendations. And Tom talks about kind of, it knows your browsing history, it knows your interests, all those kinds of things, and it can start to tailor things. To me, that becomes really fascinating because now you have this personal shopper who knows you. And if I'm a Gen Z consumer, the kinds of things that are going to influence my recommendation are going to be different than somebody that's older or a different demographic or whatever the case may be. And so then you start to really have these tailored, personalized experiences, which force brands to really know your target audience, make decisive decisions. Strategy is always the art of sacrifice. Like, we have to really be more dialed in because Geo is searching everything in the entire ecosystem. You can't be everything to everyone. And so you have to make concise decisions over what kind of audiences are we going to prioritize, and then what are those channels of influence that how they're hitting them. And that's where I'm still increasingly excited about the importance of social media and the social channels and the importance of those, which have always been, the beacons of culture and trends and where all this kind of sparks and flashes happen. But now to give that weight and authority to really influence decisions when it comes to this kind of personal agent that I have, this personal shopper that I have, becomes really interesting and gives us a lot of opportunities to just reimagine, our industry. I think, there's a lot of fears about just the elimination of all those things, but all that influence and where all that influence comes from, there's going to be, marketing jobs to go make sure that content is created, strategy minds that are thinking about the target audience and where we need to be, and then platforms and tools like, FancyAI that give us the visibility into all that so we can make those strategic decisions on behalf of our clients.
Do you feel like people generally in the industry, it is getting reimagined? Or are we a little sort of stalled with, this all has happened so quickly. Do you see it happening yet?
I see it happening here. But no, not in the industry overall. I think it's I always, I'm just, thinking about, the business that we're building here at the Shipyard. And I think it's a competitive advantage because, I think the industry's been stalled for a while. I think we kind of lost the craft. We lost a lot of what makes advertising special and gets people excited and creates campaigns that just create culture and start to influence the way that people see the world out of the marketing communications world. A lot of that has been lost. We got into data. We got really precise. We started focusing on targeting, and everything became kind of mathematics. And when you start to add AI and technology, it's almost too natural just to kind of let that current continue to go and just follow it, as opposed to all of this is happening. Let's take a step back. How do we reimagine? How do we think about this business? How do we reimagine the crafts and the specialties that we have inside this organization and start to deploy them in new, more imaginative ways, given the future, as opposed to just trying to be a part of it and ride that wave? And the agencies that do that, will get smaller in size because they'll just be displacing people as opposed to using people and the imaginations and creativity of those people in new ways.
So you clearly find that exciting. You're not finding it daunting at all.
I don't find it daunting. No, I'm totally excited about where the future of all this is headed. I mean, I read all the press. I know everything that people are talking about, but, been in this business a long time. And I read that when the websites were created. I read that when social media was created, the data and all the, platforms and, everything it's just, there's always something in the industry that's threatening jobs. And, the people that are smart learn how to leverage those technologies, those advancements in new ways that drive growth for our clients, and continue to be able to do that, use creativity to drive growth and leverage all the technology available. It's an exciting business to be in.
Yeah, that's how I feel. That's how I feel. Now, as this becomes commercialized, you mentioned all the things, social media and then search. It really wasn't as good once it became commercialized. I mean, search was rather agnostic. It was just awesome. It was organic. And then, of course, all the leading listings have been paid for. It's tough to find that objectivity. Right now, just talking, AI is so much more than generative search, but just taking that particular space, it's epic because it is storytelling. It does, if you asked about travel, it gives you a 5-day itinerary. It feels more objective. But the only reason these things are worth trillions of dollars is advertising. And our industry is going to be the center of that. So when that really takes hold, which is now to the near future, how will the experience be for consumers? Do you think the commercialization of this could mess it up? That it won't be the experience that we're having now?
I think it's unlikely. There'll be ads peppered into these things, but the way the technology works, the organic part of it has to be preserved, or else the systems don't work. The systems have foundational models that allow them to kind of like determine what information is important and what is not. They call them weights, like certain types of information is weighted more than other types of information. But ultimately, they're trying to replicate a human experience here the same way that human intelligence works. And if you bastardize that with ads at a foundational level, then it destroys the technology. Where ads come in as overlays, but I don't think ads will really infect the core technology here.
I hope you're right. I don't know, in search and in social. What do you think, David?
So I think what Tom is saying is correct. I think there's a certain limitation to how much the platforms are going to be able to prioritize advertising. It's going to be present, obviously. So there's no world and universe where that doesn't exist. But the underlying principle of what makes it an exciting new evolution from traditional search is this tailored personalization, personal shopper in your pocket that you can ask these questions to, and it scours everything and brings that information back. That foundation has to always exist. And so advertisers and marketers and our clients are all going to still need to be thinking about how to fuel content, tell stories, and do all those things. And then, we're going to figure out how to layer in a paid component to that as well. And how effective is that? And, what role does that play? And that'll all sort itself out over time. But you're never going to be able to take away from the integrity of a personalized, honest, authentic recommendation that is the promise of geo and where that platform is headed. Same thing with social. We had a lot of, advertising, and it got muddy for a while and kind of got mucked up a little bit. And then, the space of influencer marketing emerged, and it got more creative ways to find people to tell your stories instead of just creating ads that are disruptive and interfering that aren't relevant. Now people are able to have that same benefit of the social platform. They're looking at trends, they're looking at content, culture, everything that they're interested in. And now those individuals that are creating that content become a voice. And so the platform emerged. We got into a more creative space that's sustainable, both for the benefit of what the platform is, as well as what the marketing industry needs in order to kind of support that and drive revenue. And I think same thing will happen in this space. And same thing continues to happen over time as the industry evolves is, it's going to be muddy and there'll be a lot of people talking about it, and have a lot of negative things in the marketplace, but eventually it'll all settle down, and eventually we'll all know how to buy ads on these platforms, and we'll also be telling stories across multiple platforms in order to drive influence.
I mean, it's very inspiring. I think folks will find that very inspiring. What I like about both of you is you're telling it in which we all can understand it, and I think we all can find our place in this evolution. It really fits my belief. But I have one more really important question. I mean, we're on video, so I can see this. Everyone's can hear this in audio, but you're wearing a Purdue sweatshirt. I'm an Ohio State fan. What can you really even say about Purdue? I mean, you're wearing it with such pride.
It's basketball season. It's the only time of the year I get to wear it.
Go, baby.
You know, we'll be an early round exit, but we're a number 2 seed. Ohio State isn't a number 2 seed, so this is my one time of the year I get to wear Purdue gear, and then I got to go away for the rest of the year and never talk about sports again.
Are you going to go to any games? I hope you do.
I went to some games. Yeah, I will see what the tournament if they make it all the way to Indy. It'd be fun to go there.
Oh, the finals are in Indianapolis? See,
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. I learned something. So that would be so perfect. Purdue in Indianapolis. Yep. Are you a sports fan, Tom?
Yeah. You I think you glossed over that I went to IU earlier. And so we already had a really, really great season. I remember you and I spoke about this before.
Oh, yeah. What happened there? Indiana. Let me see if I remember the football season with Ohio State. Oh.
Yes, it wasn't great for Ohio State.
I blocked it.
Yeah, I figured.
Blocked out of my mind. All right, it's time. It's time for Love Notes. In Love Notes, we will riff on some of the industry's most recent events and trends. Are you ready? I went to South by Southwest this year. Haven't done it for years because I don't really like conferences. I don't like lines. I don't like crowds. And then once I get in the room, I don't like sitting. I'm really only interested if I'm talking. So I went to South by Southwest because I had a panel. We had an activation with our client, Electric for All, with iHeart, and our good business partner, Lillian Marsh, had an epic presentation on archetypes. She filled the room. The fact is, I'm so glad I went. It was so eye-opening. It really is like a concentrated week in which someone like me, you know, really can in touch with what's going on in culture. So many young people, really. I mean, yeah, I've been in this business, as I said, for many decades. To see so many 20-somethings excited about this business and looking toward the future is very encouraging to me. And they're smart people. They could do other things, but they were doing this, you know, they're no dummies. They chose it because of the excitement and interest in the business. And I really liked that. But there were a couple of announcements. I went to, as I said, iHeart invited us, and we had a few evenings with them. And they brought to life something they recently announced. So let me read it to you, and I just want to talk about what you think about it. iHeartMedia, the leading audio company in America, and TikTok, the world's leading destination for short-form mobile video, today announced a groundbreaking multi-platform partnership that will bring TikTok creators into iHeart's ecosystem. The collaboration includes the launch of the TikTok Podcast Network, which will feature up to 25 new podcasts hosted by TikTok creators, as well as a national broadcast digital radio channel and a series of live event integration. So here we are, the world's most innovative, newest video creator content platform, joining hands with what's really a pretty mature medium. I mean, it's most of its revenue comes from radio. It builds podcasts. iHeart is put together, has 2,200 salespeople all over the country, but radio, really, audio pushes their whole thing. They join together to build the TikTok podcast network. I found that fascinating. What do you guys think?
I think it's a super interesting bridge between what's happening when you think about the world of TikTok, which is really known for, right, having a pulse on culture, like I've talked about. It is on top of trends. It is creating culture in a lot of ways and pushing that out into the world. And now you combine that with the power and authority and confidence and trust that exists in the iHeart platform, and it becomes really interesting in how it elevates the influence that these individuals who have their pulse on culture can have on the overall world. It gives them a larger platform. And what's really even interesting in this conversation is now you're taking what used to be short, fleeting social signals, and you're giving them a platform where they can now go, instead of 60 seconds, they're going 30 minutes. That creates so much more searchable data for search engines to be able to pull from. And you have human verified, individuals now, instead of from social. Now they're moving to podcasts. It's human verified. They're in studios in LA and New York, and that's giving them more authority. And so even in this world we're talking about in geo and search and the future of that, even this move has a huge impact on that space alone, because it's giving more authority to these podcasters now, and their social influence is now going to be able to influence, the way we think about, getting recommendations and talking about our personal shoppers and all that kind of good stuff. So it's interesting. I think it's a smart move because it's bringing youth and culture and energy to that existing platform, and it has, a lot of implications across the entire ecosystem of the world of advertising.
Yeah, so you basically, and interested if Tom has a thought on this, but you basically I didn't see it this way till you just said it. I did obviously get podcasts and those creators wanting to monetize, commercialize. iHeart, one of the biggest media companies in the world as well. So I saw it totally in its commercialization. And what you're saying is behind that is actually everything that's going on in generative search and AI that fueled that.
That type of content now is so interesting because it has a whole new value proposition behind it. Like, TikTok has emerged for just being an incredible way for brands to get their products discovered. And it's also a great way to get real feedback and real excitement and real signals from other people and users, and what we call like user generated content. But it's got a whole new layer now too, that like all of that information there that's being spoken or in the videos, like all of that can be seen or transcribed or read by the AI engines. And then now that actually serves as training ground for your business. So what's being said there is super critical and really helps define who your audience is and the way that the world thinks about your brand. One of the things that our platform does is it helps people understand who their audience is and prescribes their audiences. And sometimes when we show that to clients, they'll say, well, that's not what your AI found is our audience is not who we think our audience is. We think our audience is this. And what's interesting is, we're not just guessing at that audience. We're relying on our AI to go, and it's scoured every single piece of content out there, and it's literally telling you who your audience actually is. So there's a lot of value in addition to the customer acquisition that comes from these channels and building the brand message that comes from these channels. But it also trains these new systems on who you are, and will ultimately lead to discovery and will help the AIs make better decisions when they want to recommend you for a specific query.
Oh God, I'm so glad I brought this one up. I actually thought, okay, we'll talk about something different, but it absolutely relates to everything we were just talking about with AI and FancyAI. All right, here's the next one. 75% of enterprise B2B companies will increase budgets for influencer relations. This is, of course, in the same subject. External influencers, such as analysts and subject matter experts, are playing a bigger role in B2B buying decisions in the buying network. Buyers increasingly rely on them for fact-based insights. Most B2B organizations will increase budget for influencers. The increase is down to recognition of power of external influencers will and build trust, especially in an increasingly AI-powered discovery environment. I guess that announcement also, or that fact that came out through research, relates to this as well. But sometimes we don't think about B2B.
Yeah, I think, one of the things, all the implications on AI that we've been talking about in geo and that stuff, because you're building credibility, influence, all those kinds of things. But what's also really interesting is we were having a conversation earlier on this podcast talking about the industry and has the industry evolved. It's kind of interesting. What do you think about B2B space, where like why weren't influencers a bigger part of the marketing mix up until this point in time? So human beings making decisions, we know the power of influence, having an expert that can really provide more personal kind of information, recommendations, and builds trust and establish trust is just inherently human. And then I guess, one of the things is like, we develop these things out in the wild, and then eventually they make their way into the rest of the marketing ecosystem, become a way of working. To me, it's not a surprise. It's almost like it's surprised it's taken this long to have it play as important a role as it is into the space. And then on top of that, like we talked about, now these influencers, have more authority, create more content, have more signals to pull from. So now if you're working with influencers in the space and they're talking and making recommendations and providing information, that's going to be very searchable information and data that gets pulled into recommendations, and it's going to continue to have an influence, whether it's, talking to the influencers or watching content from the influencers directly, or the, subsequent influence that content's going to have when you're searching and looking up queries and doing things on your own.
Love that.
Yeah, it's kind of like the difference between ads and organic, right? Like if you put an ad in front of somebody that's clearly an ad, and then you put something that's an organic listing in front of somebody, or organic created content, the data shows that people prefer the organic content, and then organic content converts better than ads do. Brands have discovered this, and they've also discovered that with influencers, it's not the biggest audience that matters. It's the targeted audience that's specific to their brand or their product that really matters.
Dave Grzelak, I know you're a great business partner for me at the Shipyard. You are an awesome co-host. Tom Howell, the fact that you're using this intelligence, this vision, your ability to develop a platform like this that I think is changing our industry. I just want to thank you for doing that and for dedicating this much time and this much passion to what I've always seen as a beautiful industry. It's going to have a great effect. This has been terrific. Thank you for joining Engineering Brand Love.
I love it, baby. Our strings attached. It's automatic, like how we laugh. I'm working